So, have you guys ever heard of a guy named Tovia Singer? Okay, he's an anti-missionary, works with an organization called Jews for Judaism, which is kind of a, they kind of work against Jews for Jesus. Jews for Jesus is kind of a, actually, I'll leave it at that. But anyway, one of the things that he talks about is what he sees as contradictions between the Newer Testament, the Besorah, and Torah. And one such area has to do with the number of people that come down into Egypt. Stephen, when he's given his little speech, he mentions that there are 75 that came to Egypt. But Bereshit 46:27 says, all the souls belonging to Yaakov who came into Egypt, who came out of his loins, aside from Jacob's sons' wives, all souls were 66 persons. And the sons of Yosef who were born to him within the Egyptians were 2 souls. All the souls of the house of Jacob who came into Egypt were 70, not 75. The number is repeated in Shemos 1:5, which we'll read next week. And it says, all told, there were 70 descendants of Yaakov. Yosef was already in Egypt. And then Devarim 10:22, Moshe Rabbeinu again says, your ancestors went down to Egypt with only 70 people. But now Adonai your God has made your numbers as many as the stars in the sky. Again, Acts 7:14 says 75. You guys have a problem with that? The Septuagint says, all the souls of the house of Jacob who came with Yosef into Egypt were 75 souls. That's what the Septuagint says. Shemos 1:5, the Septuagint says, all the souls born of Jacob were 75. And then here in Deuteronomy 10, to make things just a little confusing, it says, with 70 souls your fathers went down into Egypt. Same book, different number. Now Tovia Singer would say that the Septuagint was wrong in the first 2 areas and just happened to be correct in the third. There are some commentaries that say that the reason why 70 was chosen because it's in contrast with the 70 nations in Genesis 10. All right, and also there was a correspondence with the 70 elders from Numbers 11:16. 70 souls are numbered in Genesis 46:27, Exodus 1:5, Deuteronomy 10:22. One commentary, the commentary that you got recently, if you look that up in Acts 7:14, it says that that Stephen follows the Septuagint with his numbering, which has 75, and that it follows Jubilee. And I'll deal with Jubilees here very soon because that actually is what will help tie that all together. If you guys have a chance to buy some books, there is one book called the Dead Sea Scrolls Bible. And if that's not on your shelf, I would suggest getting that, because what that does, it takes all the extant biblical texts and puts them all together into one book so that you can kind of see what the text looked like, roughly 2,000 years ago. And what's sad is most of the texts that we need to study this don't exist. They're just destroyed. But here's one from Shemos, and it says, all the souls that came out of the loins of Yaakov were 75 souls. So that's what at least one of the biblical text says from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Bava Basra deals with this little portion, and it says, Abba, Khalifa, inquired of Rav Hia of Bar Abba. In total, you find that the Torah, given the number of Jacob's descendants who accompanied him down to Egypt as 70. However, if you add them up, because it does give a count in the Torah, if you add them up, it's 70 minus 1, 69. How are these verses to be reconciled? Now, if you were to, now I've got Tovia Singer's book. Now, I've known Tovia Singer since I lived in Wisconsin, so I moved from Wisconsin in 2002. So it's been a couple minutes since I've been there. Right before I left, he had a mutual acquaintance of ours give me a book, and it's called Let's Get Truthful. And it's it's about that thick. But the writing is really, really big. So don't think that he wrote a whole bunch of stuff. Now, what I'd like to do is actually set something down. Okay, Tovia Singer, while he is an anti-missionary, I have to admit that I agree with him about 90% of the time of what he says. Okay, but that doesn't mean that just because I disagree with 10%, I'm going to completely discredit him. I can't and I won't. The guy really is a very nice guy. I mean, he's funny. Never once did he ever yell at me or belittle me or anything like that. Never did. He was always very nice. He'd say things like, "You are so frustrated. You just don't see it." And I'm like, "Tovia, I see it. I just don't agree with your interpretation." So, looking at his book, what he does, he deals with the 70 that are in Torah, the 75, but he doesn't deal with this. There is a problem in the biblical text already because it says 70. It doesn't say 69 like it should if you add them all up. So, to go back to Baba Basra, how are these verses to be reconciled? And Rav Chia says, a twin sister was born to Dinah. As it is written, these are the sons of Leah whom she bore Yaakov and Padam Aram, in addition to his daughter Dinah. Now what it says Vayes, which the rabbis look as, instead of being S, which is kind of a pointer to a noun, it's plural. So that's why Rav Chia is saying it was twins. Okay, so it's just not like he's just not pulling this out of thin air. There's actually a reason. Now, Abba Khalifa says, but if that is true, we would have to say that a twin was born along with Binyamin as well. For it is written, and he lifted up his eyes and saw Va'es, his brother Binyamin, his mother's son. Okay, and that was from last week's Torah portion. Okay, so Rav Chia responds to him and says, I have a precious pearl in my possession, if you want to divest me of it. This is what Rav Hama bar Hanina says. The 70th person is Yocheved. And I know you've read that because that's in the Midrash says. Great book, by the way, if you want to get that 5-volume set. The 70th person is Yocheved, the mother of Moshe, who was conceived on the way to Mitzrayim, and whose birth occurred as Yaakov's entourage passed between the walls of the city as they entered Mitzrayim. As it says, the name of Avram's wife was Yocheved, the daughter of Levi, who was born to Levi in Egypt. Her birth was in Egypt, but her conception was not in Egypt. Now, if you go to the Zohar, don't go to the Zohar. But it says, Rabbi Yitzhak said, yes, Israel corresponds to all the other nations of the world. As all the other nations are 70, Israel is also 70. So as it is written, all the souls of the house of Yaakov who came to Egypt were 70. So the Zohar is really good at taking things from over here and taking things over here and putting them together, and people saying, wow, that's really cool, but the thing is that if you want the text of the Bible to have an effect on your life, don't go to the Zohar. Zohar is dessert. You cannot live and survive on dessert. You need meat. You need milk. And that's what we have in Torah. If you go to the Peshat and you go to the Remez, as I've said before, the Peshat tells you how, and the Drash tells you why. Okay, it's very important that you deal with those, not with Zohar or Kabbalah. So what I've done, I also went through like the Besitka Rabbati, because I wanted to find out how uncommon or how common the Torah related to 75 was. And the Besitka Rabbati, every time it quotes Genesis 46:27, it says 70. three score and 10, if you like that better. Here's another one, the Tanhuma says 3 score and 10. Ezekiel, the tragic poet. This is a Jewish work that is apocryphal, lack of a better term. It doesn't even qualify to be considered midrash. So, I mean, it's like if you really wanted to kind of list things as in their importance, this is below, much farther below that. And it's a poet, or a poem. So reading it in English is not very poetic, but it says, and one from Canaan, Jacob did depart with three score souls and 10. He did go down to Egypt's land, where he did beget a host of people suffering, oppressed, ill-treated even to this day. So even this tragic poet saw 70. Let's see here, Besitka Rabati, same thing. Jastro, by the way, if you really want to get a good book set, 2-volume set, Jastro is another one that you can get. He says 70 as well. But Midrash Rabbah Bamidbar, he says that the total is 66, and then they do a lot of figuring out, trying to get it, try to figure out how to get to 70. Well, they get to 69 as well, and then they deal with Yocheved as well as the main reason why it's 70. But what's interesting is the 70 are all men, so keep that in mind as well. So then, what about the Targums? What do they say? So in my collection at home, Okelos, Targum, Pseudo-Yonatan, Targum Neophiti, and I have 4 fragmentary Targums. All those say 70, but I will say that the fragmentary Targums, they're so fragmentary that they fragment over that, and I have no idea what they would have said. So there's a character called Philo. Have you guys heard of Philo? Okay, he was a Hellenized Jew, and he created a very long series of books. And what he tended to do was kind of take everything and kind of spiritualize it. Spiritualization is really big and really good. If you wanted to say, wow, yeah, that's a really good commandment, but you spiritualize it, then you don't have to do it, because you spiritualize it, and that's its meaning. So that's what Philo kind of does. But he does things kind of unique. And this is kind of a long passage, but I think this is one of 2 areas that kind of helps tie 70 and 75 together. So that's why I'm going to read it. And after you read it, you're going to go, huh? And it's okay to say, huh, because I'm still doing that too. He says, yeah, there you go. Very appropriately, therefore, does the companion of knowledge think it right to leave the region of the outward sense by name Haran, and he leaves it when he is 75 years old. There's where the 75 years comes from. And this number is on the confines of the nature discernible by the outward senses, and that intelligible by the intellect, and of the older and younger, and also of the perishable and imperishable nature, for the elder and the imperishable ratio that comprehensible by the intellect exist in the 70, the younger ratio, discernible by the outward senses. In this latter also the practicer of virtue is seen exercising himself when he has not yet been able to carry off the perfect prize of victory. Here. For it is said that all the souls which came out of Jacob were 75. For to him, while wrestling and not shrinking, that all from the truly sacred contest for the acquisition of virtue belong the souls which are the offspring of the body, and which have not yet acquired reason, but are still attracted by the multitude of the outward senses. After all that, really the only takeaway from that is that he's making a correlation between the age of 75 and 75 descendants of Jacob. But he also mentioned the 70 as well. So the second paragraph. For Jacob is the name of one who is wrestling and engaged in a contest trying to trip up his antagonist, not of one who has gained the victory, but he appeared to have gained ability to behold God, his name was changed to Israel. And when he uses only the computation of 70, having exportated the number 5, the number of outward senses, for it is said, thy father went down to Egypt being 70 souls. And I'm not going to read the rest of this because it's just, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's kind of unintelligible. But what he has done is he's tried to give a spiritual reason why some texts say 75 and some say 70. But he didn't need to work that hard. Because the book of Jubilees, in chapter 44, the very end of chapter 44, it says, all of the persons of Jacob who entered Egypt were 70 persons. Therefore, all of these sons and grandsons of his were 70, but 5 died in Egypt before Yosef, and they had no children. And the 2 sons of Yehuda, who were Er and Onan, died in the land of Canaan, and they had no children. And the children of Israel buried those who perished, and they were set among the 70 nations. Was it 70 or 75? Yes. There, that's the right answer. So anyway, that's it. Good Shabbos.